BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Oliver Cromwell is one of the most influential and divisive figures in British history. He was born in Huntingdon, but his decapitated head is buried under Sidney Sussex College in Cambridge. But how did it get there? Stuart Orme, curator at the Cromwell Museum in Huntingdon, explains the extraordinary journey that saw that head end up being stored in an industrial biscuit tin.
Claims his head is buried in Cambridge, but his body is missing. The reason being that Cromwell died of natural causes in 1658 and was buried in Westminster Abbey in London. 2 years later, of course, the monarchy is restored. Charles II wanted to pay back who was against anybody who was involved with the death of his dad, Charles I. And basically in January 1661, Cromwell and a couple of the other regicides who'd been involved with the trial and execution of Charles I, their bodies were exhumed and ceremonially hung at Tyburn in London. Their corpses, which were kind of mummies by this stage, effectively, sort of mummified corpses, were then cut down and their heads hacked off. The bodies almost certainly were thrown into a burial pit alongside, although there have been various conspiracy theories about places that Cromwell's corpse might have been smuggled off to. But almost certainly today his body is buried under the road there somewhere at the end of Oxford Street, just across the road from where Marble Arch is today. His head was stuck on a spike outside the Palace of Westminster, and it stayed there for about 25 years being weathered before the spike it was on snapped off in a storm, and it was picked up by a soldier who decided to keep it as a souvenir, but he was frightened of being caught with it. So he sewed it up in a leather sack and stuffed it up his chimney, only confessed what he'd done on his deathbed to his daughter, who sold the head to a Swiss collector who exhibited it in a private museum in London and made a lot of money by showing it off to people. It was then passed through various people's hands until 1814, when it was sold to a family called Wilkinson, who kept it for over 100 years and used to get it out and show it to people at dinner parties. In 1960, the family then gave it to Sidney Sussex College in Cambridge, which is where it is buried today. If you go to Sidney Sussex College, which of course is open regularly to visitors, and you go into the chapel, as you go in just before the door, there is a plaque on the wall that says, near this spot is buried the head of Oliver Cromwell, Lord Protector of England. The exact spot is unmarked, I suspect probably to stop students digging it up during Rag Week and having a game of football with it. The college archivist tells me that when they buried it at the college, they decided to try and put it in an airtight container in order to preserve it for future generations in case of any scientific study. And the only airtight container they could find that was large enough to accommodate the head and the spike it was on was an old-fashioned catering-sized tin of biscuits. So yes, Oliver Cromwell's head is buried in a biscuit tin.